Hello my dear viewers, I would like to thank you for watching the video and I wanted to say subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be very grateful and you will not miss new videos. Enjoy the video. My name is Sarah Bennett and I've lived in the same apartment complex in Columbus, Ohio for 3 years. It's not fancy, but it's home. The neighbors are nice enough, mostly older folks who keep to themselves. Except for one, apartment 3B, the door at the end of the hall. No one ever saw the tenant, rent checks showed up on time, and there were occasional packages left at the door, but as far as anyone knew, the place was empty. That was fine with me until last week when everything started to go wrong. It was a Tuesday night, and I was coming home from work late. The hallway was quiet, the dim overhead lights buzzing faintly. As I passed 3B, I noticed something strange. The door was cracked open. It wasn't much, just an inch or two, but enough to see that the lights inside were off. My first thought was that someone had broken in, but there was no sign of damage. I hesitated. Should I call the landlord, the police? Then I heard it. A faint sound like shuffling coming from inside the apartment. "Hello," I called, my voice barely above a whisper. The sound stopped. I stepped closer, my pulse quickening. "Is everything okay in there?" No response. Against every ounce of common sense I had, I pushed the door open. The air inside was stale, like the windows hadn't been opened in years. The living room was sparse, just a couch, a coffee table, and a TV sitting on the floor. The carpet was worn, the walls bare. "Hello," I tried again, stepping inside. My foot brushed against something on the floor. I looked down and saw an envelope, plain and unmarked. It must have been dropped near the door. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. It wasn't sealed, so I slid the contents out. Inside was a single photograph. It was of me, taken just that morning. I was walking to my car, looking at my phone, completely unaware, my stomach twisted. I turned and bolted out of the apartment, slamming the door behind me. That night, I barely slept. Every creak and groan in my apartment felt magnified, like someone was just outside the door. I told myself it was nothing, a prank, maybe. But the next morning, as I left for work, I saw another envelope. This one was taped to my door. Inside was another photograph. It showed me, asleep in my bed. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the photo. It was me, no doubt about it. My hair, my blankets, the faint glow of my bedside lamp. Someone had taken this while I was asleep. My hands trembled as I stuffed the picture back into the envelope. This wasn't a prank. Whoever had been in apartment 3B was watching me. I glanced down the hall at the door to 3B. It was shut tight now, the same as it always was. The faint morning light filtering through the hallway window did nothing to calm my nerves. I didn't go to work that day. Instead, I locked every door and window in my apartment and sat on the couch with my phone in my hand. I was too scared to call the police. What was I supposed to say? That I'd found a creepy photo in an apartment no one had lived in for years. As the hours dragged on, I found myself staring at the ceiling. The floor above me, 3B, was silent, just like it always was, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was up there. By the time night fell, my fear had turned into something else, anger. Whoever this was, they thought they could scare me, make me feel helpless. Well, they were wrong. I grabbed a flashlight and a small kitchen knife and headed upstairs. The hallway was quiet, the air heavy. I stood in front of 3B for a long moment, my heart pounding. Then I raised my hand and knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. "Whoever's in there, I know what you're doing," I shouted, my voice echoing down the hall. "If you don't stop, I'm calling the police." Still nothing. I tried the doorknob, half expecting it to be locked. To my surprise, it wasn't. The door creaked open, revealing the same dim, lifeless apartment I'd seen before. "Hello," I called, stepping inside. The air was even staler than before, the faint smell of mildew hanging in the air. The furniture was exactly where it had been: couch, coffee table, TV. But something felt different. I shone my flashlight around the room, and that's when I saw it. A door at the back of the apartment. It was slightly ajar, revealing a staircase leading down into the darkness. I didn't know there was a basement. My legs felt like lead as I approached the stairs. Every instinct told me to turn around, to leave and never come back. But I couldn't. The steps creaked under my weight as I descended, the beam of my flashlight bouncing against the concrete walls. The basement was small and cramped, the air thick and damp. A single table sat in the center of the room, covered in papers and photographs. I stepped closer, my breath catching in my throat. The photographs were all of me, walking to work, sitting in my apartment, sleeping in my bed, and beneath the photographs was a notebook, its pages filled with scrawled handwriting. I picked it up, flipping through it with trembling fingers. Most of it was incoherent ramblings about watching, waiting, protecting. But one line stood out, repeated over and over again: "She doesn't know yet." Before I could process what I was seeing, I heard it. A soft creak coming from the top of the stairs. I turned, my flashlight shaking as the light illuminated the staircase. Someone was standing at the top. The figure at the top of the stairs didn't move. They were shrouded in darkness, their face hidden. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. No response. I gripped the flashlight tighter, aiming it toward them, but the light barely reached. "I'm calling the police," I shouted. Still nothing. Then, slowly, they stepped forward. The faint light from the hallway above caught their face, and my blood ran cold. It was an older man, his skin pale, his eyes hollow and sunken like he hadn't slept in weeks. He wore a faded gray jacket, his shoulders slumped, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low and rasping. "Who are you?" I repeated, backing toward the table. My hands brushed against the photographs, but I didn't dare look away from him. "Why are you watching me?" He tilted his head like he didn't understand the question. "I'm protecting you," he said. His words hit me like a slap. Protecting me. I snapped. "From what?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took another step down the stairs. "Stop," I yelled, holding the flashlight out like a weapon. "Don't come any closer." His expression didn't change. "You don't understand. You're in danger." I couldn't think straight. My heart was pounding, my pulse roaring in my ears. "What are you talking about?" "Danger from who?" He hesitated, his hand gripping the railing tightly. "From him." "Him?" I said, my voice cracking. "Who's him?" The man's eyes flicked to the photographs on the table, and his face twisted into something between fear and rage. "He knows you," he said, his voice trembling. "He's been waiting for you." I shook my head, backing away until my legs hit the edge of the table. "You're insane." The man's gaze snapped back to me. his voice growing sharper. "You don't believe me. Look in the notebook." I froze, my eyes darting to the open notebook in front of me. "Read the last page," he said, his tone softer now, almost pleading. "Please." Against my better judgment, I picked up the notebook and flipped to the last page. The handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. A single sentence was scrawled across the top, underlined 3 times. "He's closer than you think." Beneath it was a series of dates and times, today's date included. And the time, it was now. My stomach twisted as the air in the room suddenly felt heavier. "You see now, don't you?" the man said, his voice almost a whisper. "He's already here." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. The man's eyes widened, his face going pale. "It's him." He turned and bolted up the stairs, moving faster than I thought possible. For a moment I stood frozen, my mind spinning. Then I grabbed the notebook and flashlight and followed him. When I reached the top of the stairs, the apartment was empty. The front door hung open, swinging slightly on its hinges. And in the middle of the living room floor was another photograph. It was of me, standing in the basement, holding the notebook. I stared at the photograph on the floor, my mind racing. It was impossible. The photo had been taken seconds ago, but there was no one in the basement with me. The man, the crash, the open door, it all blurred together, a chaotic puzzle I couldn't piece together. I stepped into the hallway, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The door to 3B was wide open, the faint smell of mildew drifting out into the corridor. "Hello." I called out, my voice shaking. No answer. I moved cautiously down the hall, my heartbeat loud in my ears. The building was silent, unnaturally so, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. When I reached the stairs, I froze. Lying on the bottom step was another photograph. It showed me standing at the edge of the hallway, staring at the open door to 3B. I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. My hands shook as I bent down to pick it up, my eyes darting nervously around the empty staircase. That's when I saw him. At the bottom of the stairs, just beyond the reach of my flashlight, stood another man. But this one wasn't like the first. He was taller, broader, dressed in dark, nondescript clothes. His face was hidden, but there was no mistaking the way he stood, rigid, motionless, like he was waiting for me to move. I stepped back instinctively, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. "Who are you?" I demanded. He didn't answer. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me, and then he started walking. I bolted. I didn't think, didn't plan, just turned and ran as fast as I could. My legs burned as I raced down the hallway toward the stairs at the other end of the building. Behind me, I could hear his footsteps, steady, unhurried, like he knew I couldn't escape. I hit the stairwell hard, nearly tripping as I descended. My breath came in ragged gasps, fear tightening my chest. I burst into the lobby and threw open the front door, sprinting out into the cold night air. The street was empty, the faint glow of streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. I ran to the middle of the road, spinning around to see if he'd followed me. The door to the building swung shut with a heavy thud. No one came out. For a moment I stood there, trembling, trying to catch my breath. My mind raced with questions, but none of it made sense. The notebook, the photographs, the man. And then I remembered the first man, the one from the basement. He'd told me I was in danger. He'd told me he was coming. I looked down at the notebook in my hands, flipping to the last page again. He's closer than you think. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I reached a small diner a few blocks away. It was brightly lit, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the still night. I stumbled inside, collapsing into a booth near the back. The waitress gave me a concerned look, but I waved her off, too shaken to explain. I pulled out the notebook, desperate to make sense of it. Flipping through the pages, I noticed something I hadn't before. There was a list of names. Each name was followed by a date, and all of the dates had already passed. All except one. Mine, Sarah Bennett. Today's date. My hands shook as I read the words again and again. The meaning was clear, but I didn't want to believe it. The man in the basement hadn't been lying. I was next. The door to the diner jingled, and I looked up instinctively. A man walked in, tall, broad, dark clothes. He didn't look at anyone else. His eyes locked onto mine, and he smiled.